Hey guys, welcome back to yet another banner review video. In this video, I'll be covering the highly anticipated character Homa, who is coming soon in the global version of Sword of Constellaria. As always, there will also be timestamps in the video description that you can use to skip ahead to the section that you're interested in. Now, Homa is a real powerhouse in the game, but not in a conventional breaker sort of way, and I'll explain as I go through her kit. I'll start off with her trait, which is on the right hand side of the screen, and this time what I do is I put both a 1 star and a 5 star trait just so you can see how her trait scales up as you upgrade her. Now her trait is pretty key and central to how she works. We'll start off with the smaller stuff first. First of all, she ignores block and her trait increases her physical attack stat more depending on how high you get her trait to. But the biggest thing about her trait is anytime that she attacks or the ally that her companion bird is attached to attacks in a single target attack. Now this is pretty key. Her bird called Balor will also be called to deal an additional single target attack, dealing up to 20 to 40% of Homa's physical attack stat in damage. Essentially what this means is that if you have Homa attach her bird Balor to an ally and the ally does a single target attack, the attack gets boosted by an additional hit where you see Homa's bird come flying in. If you get Homa's trait high enough, the damage is pretty nice, but more importantly, if she's at a high enough trait, her bird Balor will also steal 2 random buffs and 1 energy for Homa. Homa's default skill is knockback shot, which is okay, but honestly isn't as good as some of her key skills, and I wouldn't recommend using her default skill at all because you have much better use for the limited 3 slot skills or passive that she has. Now looking at her key skills, which is on the left hand side of the slide, her rank 1 actually already has 2 of her key skills, and I would highly recommend to use a Castelia to unlock both sides of her rank 1. Her left side skill is called Hovering Support, which is an instant ability where she will attach her bird Balor to an ally, and this ties in with the trait that I just mentioned. Not only that, this gives both the ally that receives Balor and Homa herself move 2 buff, jump buff, as well as the attack 2 buff for 2 turns. Now this is pretty significant in itself. For one thing, the attack 2 buff is actually still pretty uncommon in the current meta in global. Not many characters can apply this, so we now actually have a very reliable way to apply attack 2, and it's also nice that Homa herself gets this buff because it ties in with the damage that her trait does whenever the ally does a single target attack. Beyond this, the move 2 and jump buff is also very relevant, as it allows the DPS character that you attach to really have significantly increased mobility. Take for example Global's most famous DPS character now, which is August. August currently has a default move of 3 tiles. If he is buffed with Hovering Support, he will have a move range of 5 tiles and the jump capability as well. This gives him a mobility that is equal to Seekers, for example Cole. And I'm sure you can imagine how scary a breaker like August can be if he has the mobility of a Seeker. Now on the right hand side of Homa's rank 1, we have yet another of what I imagine is her key skill, which is Tacit Choice. Now Tacit Choice is a 2 skill in 1, and you have the choice to choose whichever one you want to use, sort of similar to Akambe's skill or Kokoa's skill. In the 2 options that you can choose, you have an attack type skill and you have a healing type skill. First off, the attack type skill, which is called Barul Attack. This is a ranged attack that allows Homa to call one of her birds that does damage as well as inflict blind and physical defense 3 down, lasting 2 rounds on a single target. Now this is absolutely massive by itself because Physical Defense 3 is a new debuff that no one else has. As far as I can tell, Homa is the only character in the game, at least as of now, that carries this debuff. And Physical Defense 3 down is a 60% reduction on an enemy's physical defense stat. Contrast that with Physical Defense 2, which other characters do have, but Physical Defense 2 being only minus 40% physical defense. This is one of the reasons why Homa is highly desirable, because the additional reduction from minus 40 to minus 60% is pretty significant, and you should be seeing bigger numbers just by having this debuff up. It doesn't end there though. At the same time, Balor, who may be attached to someone else through her hovering support, will also dish out an AoE attack. The second choice, which is a healing type skill, is called Cool Breeze. In this skill, Homa will call another of her birds to heal a single target ally for 70% of her physical attack stat, and the notable thing about this healing is that before the heal, it will cleanse any null healing received, meaning that this heal will work even if the target is debuffed with null healing. Similar to the attack skill, at the same time, any ally that has Balor attached will also do an AoE heal that scales off Homa's physical attack stat. Now these two skills will already take 2 of her 3 slots, so for the remainder slots you have 2 choices which I highlight in blue, and it depends on how you want to play Homa. The first is a passive called Rampage Archer. Now Rampage Archer has 2 effects. Firstly, it allows Homa to attack adjacent units even though she is using a bow. But more important than that, if there's an enemy next to Homa, she also gets a massive attack plus 15% and critical rate plus 30%. Now the drawback to this of course is that it requires you to place Homa right next to an enemy, which isn't always desirable. But having that big boost to attack and crit will also mean that anytime her Balor is triggered by the ally that it's attached to, it will also be getting the plus 15 attack and plus 30% critical boost. You can also of course potentially combine this with Mega Melee Crossbow, where it gives her an additional plus 32% damage if she's attacking enemies adjacent to her, which could potentially turn her into a powerhouse DPS support by herself. The other option, if you want her to play more of a support that really brings out your best DPS to the next level, what I would recommend is instead give her the Longbow of Martyrs. This allows her to inflict a debuff that increases damage done to the enemy by 10%, which will also be triggered anytime her bird attacks the target. If you use the Longbow, you can of course still use Rampage Archer, but again, you really need to place Homa next to an enemy unit, and the painful thing about Rampage Archer is that it doesn't work or it doesn't do anything if there's no enemy unit next to Homa, so in some battles you may not want to use that. The other option is to use her rank 11 ultimate, which is Hashalaram Carnival. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Now her rank 11 ultimate, which targets a single target ally, provides the ally with a one-time dodge buff, as well as the ally that Balor is sitting on, which helps a lot in terms of survivability of your party. Along with this, both the targets, which is the target receiving this buff as well as the target having Balor, will initiate a physical AoE damage, so that's pretty nice. But on top of this, that AoE physical damage will also inflict null active skill and null passive skill, which can greatly shut down enemy units and should actually also be pretty handy in PvP situations. This ultimate ability is also another way that you can use to land Balor on the target, though it does have drawbacks, one being that it's on the long 4 round cooldown and it's not instant turn ability when compared to her rank 1 hovering support skill. Still, it will be my skill of choice if you find Rampage Archer undesirable or not very practical in a particular battle. The only 2 other skills that I want to mention is her rank 5 reaction skill and rank 9 basic attack skill. Both are also pretty notable. Rank 5 evasive mirage gives her an additional ability to dodge, and this works by her inflicting blind status on an enemy unit before she receives the attack, and if she happens to dodge an attack, she also deals a strike back. The only drawback here is that blind is only 80% effective, so she can still get hit by an attack even though the enemy is blinded, and it only works one time per round. But it is one good way to at least increase her survivability, because beyond this she doesn't actually have many other dodge or shield or ways to increase her survivability in the field. At rank 9 she also gets a new basic attack, and the one that I would pick is Tangling Flying Knives. This attack allows Homa to move again after she uses her basic attack, but only limited to her remaining movement tiles +1 for the round. It is pretty nice though, because you can combine this with Rampage Archer, meaning that you can walk Homa next to an enemy unit, get the Rampage Archer bonus, attack the unit, and then retreat away. The +1 tile movement bonus is also pretty sweet, as it is another way to increase the mobility for Homa. So now that we've gone through her kit, my thoughts on Homa. First of all, well, she's the only unit in the game with access to physical defense 3 down, and quite honestly, just that alone to me is enough to justify a pull, but of course she is more than that. Her unique capability to share her bird with an ally allows you to sort of bring a key DPS unit to the next level. She's sort of a way to buff a key DPS unit to have additional mobility and getting the attack 2 buff, as well as getting additional damage from her bird flying in and doing a bit of extra chip damage anytime a single target attack is done. And depending on how high her trait is, she also has the ability to dispel enemy buffs by stealing them. She has some heal utility that bypasses null healing debuffs, and she can also cleanse debuffs as well. The Rampage Archer passive, especially if you have a 5-star Mega Melee crossbow, allows Homa to potentially be a very capable melee DPS as well, not forgetting that anytime she does a single target attack, she will also trigger Balor flying in and hitting the enemy. That being said, there are some things to consider for Homa. First of all, Balor will only fly in on single target attacks, so if a key DPS does AoE type damage, one good example will be August's Wrath Devastation attack, it will not trigger Balor flying in. You need single target attacks for that. The other thing is that if you really want to play Homa at her full potential, you really do need one Castelia at least to unlock both sides of her rank 1 skills. Beyond that, she is a tad squishy because she relies mainly on the blind mechanic, which is 80% effective, and dodge for survivability. If you want to do damage by placing her next to an enemy unit, she will obviously be at great danger of taking attacks, and she may not survive for long. All things considered though, I know many people will have pulled for August, and he really didn't disappoint. I used him a lot, and really I think is that if you did use, or if you are using August, then Homa is the perfect partner for him. It's sort of like salt and pepper or hand and glove. They go really well together, and you will not be disappointed if you plan on using Homa to go with your August. That's it for this character evaluation / banner review. Till then, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye!